Greetings, YouTube. This is your good friend Fragments of Memory, aka the Armchair Philosopher. And I'm reacting to a video by one user named Testizel, aka Angelo, aka the Ghetto Cyrano. And one thing he pointed out was he couldn't stand pro-black niggas, and that's his word, not mine. And he wasn't really attacking those blacks that are quote-unquote pro-black. He was talking about the so-called Afrocentric pro-black conscious mindset. And in many respects, I would have to agree with him. Now, where we part ways, and I'm going to begin with that one first, where we part ways is the fact that I think to a certain degree, Afrocentrism has value, has intrinsic good value. In the sense that I think black people do need to know about their history. Black people need to understand that they are not merely chocolate-covered white people, that we have a history, a culture, a background, and we need to revel in it, relish it, cherish it, and affirm our blackness, if that be a possible way of looking at it. Now, I will also say that many people like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, or if you read the essays that Marcus Garvey wrote when he talked about black empowerment or pro-blackness, number one, it wasn't a slogan, just a tattoo on your arm or wear as a t-shirt. It was something that was to be lived. And Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, there was even a gentleman by the name of Paul Nathaniel Johnson who ran an organization called Fahami, which was a movement that happened around the 20s and the 30s. And there were several other black empowerment or pro-black movements that were in the United States that discussed black people getting self-respect. Some of them Christian, some of them not. But many of these organizations taught blacks about self-respect. They talk about economics. They talked about educating oneself. It even talked about having good hygiene, having good etiquette, having good elocution, or good diction, rather, to eloquently express oneself. And all these things are positive things. And that I would dispute with you, Mr. Ghetto Cyrano, is that in that sense, I think the pro-black mentality has value in that regard. However, where we agree is too often a lot of the so-called Afrocentric pro-black people are quick to say they won't work for the white man and get their own business, which is commendable. However, many times your own business is selling bootleg DVDs and CDs at the local barbershop, as opposed to maybe opening up your own restaurant or opening up your own bookstore, opening up your own barbershop even. I'm also perplexed at the fact that many of the so-called conscious are quick to call many black men and women who work in the corporate field or just in any job a sellout or an Uncle Tom, when in reality that is not the case. And I refer back to a quote from H. Rap Brown, which says, "I'd rather see a cat with a processed head and a natural mind than a natural head and a processed mind." And too often, there is a lot of processed-minded thinking when it comes to the Afrocentric community. Now, I can remember being a part of the Afrocentric community a little bit. It began around January of 2000. Or excuse me, let me correct myself. It began late around November, December of 2000, early January of 2001. And I just remember getting into black history, black culture, learning about my blackness, learning about myself as a black man in the tapestry of history. And I remember I started going to all these events, or there was a lecture. I started shopping in black owned and operated bookstores. I even went to a spoken word venue that's in the city. And I saw a lot of these brothers and sisters spouting poetry, saying a lot of these positive and constructive things, and all was wonderful. However, when you would hear about certain brothers and certain sisters in the so-called conscious circles, there was always this air of promiscuity, where there were brothers who were married but having affairs on their wives. There were sisters who the rumors seemed to float around that they got around. That if you were looking for a good time, you need to go see Sister so-and-so. So a lot of that went down in the so-called conscious thing, even though they spouted many of the ideas. And I also noticed that a lot of the conscious people were very cliquish. If you didn't belong in their circle, they looked down on you. And even when these so-called conscious folks, not only did they come off as cliquish, too often they were quick to have that arrogance of, I'm more conscious than you. Just like I referred to in a previous video about the so-called New Ager. I'm more intelligent or enlightened than you. The conscious person also had that sort of mentality. And so I'm with you there. Another thing that really stood out to me was you did point out that a lot of slavery, a lot of the slave trade went on because many Africans sold other Africans into slavery. Whether it was prisoners of war, whether it was I'm coming up for a loss of words here. Whether they were prisoners of war, whether they were prisoners of, or maybe it was someone who had offended the tribe and was sold off. Now, where I think I may interject is slavery in Africa was not similar to the type of chattel slavery that was done here in these United States of America. So slavery did exist, and slavery has existed for a very long time. The type of slavery that the blacks in America went through is different than the slavery that went on in Africa. Which I'm not going to say one is far worse than the other. Just that I do want to put some things into perspective. And also that you're right that Africa was not a utopia filled with kings and queens. In fact, the idea of the utopia is foolish. There's no such thing as a true utopia. Because even when you get into a utopia, you now are in a dystopia. As many philosophers and fiction writers will even tell you. I also wanted to look at the fact that merely because you understand your history doesn't mean that you are better than one who does not understand their history or understand their blackness or understand where they come from. So study is very important. I want to compliment you on this video though. I think it is frustrating to have a lot of the so-called conscious people preaching at you, but yet fail to practice those precepts in their own lives. And I can imagine if someone was shouting at me all day long, get your life right, but then their life isn't so right. On what basis do you tell me to get my life right? So I can feel you on this one. Not to say that I despise anyone who is conscious or the quote unquote conscious mentality, but I think that mentality must be tempered with some sort of balance and some sense of perspective. And I think that's what is key there. Well, thank you for the video, and hopefully whomever sees this gives their response or their opinion. Take care.